Hi everyone, Aditya here. Welcome to my channel. Today we will continue our AWS comprehensive course. Previously we have discussed about how to asynchronously invoke Lambda, the schedule feature in CloudWatch Event Bridge or Amazon Event Bridge. Now we will look how to invoke Lambda asynchronously using S3. So for that we need to use event notifications. So we use S3 event notification feature available in S3. So whenever you set up an S3 bucket, in S3 bucket you will have a feature called event notifications. When you enable that feature, you will get an option to select multiple destinations. So it may be in Lambda, it may be SQS, or it may be SNS. So use this S3 event notification allow us to integrate with different types of services like Lambda, SQS, and SNS. An event in S3. So what does an event mean in S3 is any type of action we performed on the S3 could be treated as an event like creation, deletion, updation, etc. For example, if you have an S3 bucket, if you inserted a new file or if you modified a new file with another file, then each and every task or action you performed on that S3 bucket could be treated as an event, and that event information could be sent to event notification. By using event notification, you can trigger other AWS services. Example, here you can see few APIs for the above actions. If you see S3 object created, this is for creation of S3 object. S3 object removed, this is for removing the S3 object. S3 object restore to restore the deleted object, and S3 replication, etc. So these are the API forms. But in general, if you do any event like creation, deletion, updation on the S3 bucket, that it will be treated as an event. So we'll see an use case now. For example, you want to send notifications to the bucket owners. For example, I have created my own bucket. I given access to 10 members, and each member inserting some files into my S3 bucket. I want to know what are the objects they are inserting, right? I want to know their names and type. So in that case, I will enable these event notifications. So the use case could be to send notification to bucket owners in case any operations happened on the S3. That means if all my 10 members which I have given access, if one of them inserted an object, maybe a photo, I will get a notification from the S3 that this guy has been uploaded this photo, right, with the name, or any file, or any Excel file, Word file, or any movie video. So anything, if somebody uploaded, I will get immediate notification. So this is one of the use case of using event notifications. So we'll see how this event notifications works. Okay, now we will see how S3 event notifications invoke Lambda. So we'll see. So as we discussed, we need events. So this arrow resembles an event, right? So these are events. So whenever events, that means the some actions, for example, creation of object, deletion of object, anything happening on our S3 bucket. So we need an S3 bucket now. So in this S3 bucket, we are performing some actions through these events. Okay. So in this S3 bucket, if any events occurring, then we are saying to invoke Lambda or some other services. So as we know, we have few services like SQS and SNS, and we have Lambda itself, right? So these three services we can invoke from the event notification. So first, the SQS. So I am minimizing it. Okay. So this is our SQS, that is simple notification service. That is simple queuing service, SQS. And we have SNS, that is simple notification service. And we know Lambda. Lambda is a function. This is Lambda function. Now we can use event notifications to trigger these services. You can trigger SQS, and similarly you can trigger SNS, and similarly you can trigger Lambda like this. So here what you have enabled? You have enabled event notifications. So whenever we enable this event notifications, then you can able to call one of these three services. Okay, you can able to call SQS, SNS, and Lambda. So here we are going to concentrate on the Lambda, and SQS and SNS we will cover later. So whenever you see the Lambda from the S3 bucket, right, this is an asynchronous call. This is not an synchronous call. This is asynchronously calling the Lambda. Okay. So as we learned in the previous session, whenever we are calling something asynchronously, for example, Lambda itself, that means it's prone to failure. And the failure has been happened inside the Lambda maybe 3 times. And if it fails, we will lose the event. In order to persist the failed events, as we discussed earlier, we need to store it in that letter queue. So I am going to use an real queue. So for example, I am using queue itself to store this failed things. Okay, so these are failed requests, I would say. So I'm giving, we can say these are failed ones. So which will be stored in this SQS, which we are configured as an DLQ for our Lambda. DLQ means dead letter queue. So whenever anything fails in Lambda, which will be stored inside this DLQ for further processing. And if you are look at this SNS and SQS, right? We can integrate SQS with Lambda, we can integrate SNS with Lambda, but those are not important, right? Using SNS, we can call another SQS also like this. For example, I'm going to copy this. Okay, I'm going to make it smaller, and this too. For example, SNS usually have this fan out pattern, so that means you can call n number of other services. So here I'm using SQS itself, and this SQS could call its own versions of Lambda functions like this. So this is one more Lambda, and this is another Lambda, and by using SQS we can call these functions like this. Okay, and here if we directly integrated event notifications with SQS, then SQS itself call this Lambda function like this. Okay, so if you see this whole flow diagram, right? We are getting events and event going to S3 bucket, and S3 will creating the event notifications, and these event notifications calling the SQS or SNS or Lambda, right? These things we can configure. So here in this tutorial we are going to concentrate on Lambda. So this could be an asynchronous call from the S3 event notifications. Whenever S3 calls this Lambda asynchronously, we are going to process inside the Lambda and send notifications to the users, right? Particular users that are owners of the bucket. This guy has been implemented this thing, right? This guy inserted this object. So finally we could say any failed objects inside the Lambda processing we should store in this dead letter queue, which is nothing but a simple queuing service itself, and store in this dead letter queue for the further processing. So this is the thing we are going to do in this section. So we are going to do hands-on here also. Okay, so we have seen how to invoke AWS Lambda using S3 event notifications, and we have and we will see what is, so this is the thing, right? We have seen there how to invoke AWS Lambda using S3 events. Now we'll see few points. Those are good to remember. Those are first thing, we need to enable versioning to ensure slippage of notifications. What is the slippage of notification? Why you need to enable versioning? So if you are not enable versioning, there will be some problem. What was the problem? Is if we create same object twice, right? For example, by mistakenly I added one object into the S3 bucket and you also added one object into the same S3 bucket at the same time with very less near time. Okay, and some instances even notifications take time to invoke, and in this cap we can miss one event notification and only one receives notification. Even there are two events. So that means even me and you uploaded two objects into the S3 bucket, but the event notification is missed because both has been inserted at the same time. So if we enable versioning, even though if we both inserted the same object in the near time also, the versionings will be created so that we will get the event notifications without any slippages. So for not slipping your notification or and to ensure there is no slippages in your event notifications, you have to enable versioning. So to avoid this situation, we need to enable versioning. Okay, now we will move into the hands-on. So we will see how to invoke Lambda using S3. So for that, I need an S3 bucket. So I'm going to create a new S3 bucket. So I'm going to the S3 service like this. So I'm going to create a new bucket. For that, I click on this create bucket and it's a general purpose and US East one. So just leave this and give your bucket name. So I will name it as S3 Lambda integration bucket, and we can leave remaining things as it is, right? We can leave everything like this and click on create bucket. Okay, so after clicking on this create bucket, okay, it's showing some issue. Bucket with the same name already exists. Okay, we'll change the bucket name to different way and click on create bucket and we'll wait for the bucket creation. So if you see here, bucket has been created. Now okay, I think there was an issue in this bucket. We'll see. Yeah, no issue. So bucket has been created. That is S3 Lambda integration bucket. So using this S3 Lambda integration bucket, we will integrate this Lambda function to an S3. For that, we can do one thing. We can go to the property section and see where this event notification resides. So this is the event notification section. So in this we can set our event notifications. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is click on this create event notification. So this page will be opened. Create event notification. Here first thing you have to do is general configuration. Here you can give the name of your event. I am giving S3 event to Lambda. Okay, and no need to give any prefix and suffix because for example a file starting with some text, for example aditya underscore test file, aditya underscore aws file, or aditya underscore some other file. So these kind of files, right, whenever we upload those files it matches with the prefix and it will invoke the event. For us we are going to get all the files which is not, we are not applying any kind of prefix filter kind of thing, so we are not entering this value. And also suffix also, for example you want to send notifications only for images or some video files, right, mp4, at that time only you want to send notifications, you can control here. But at this point of time I'm not going to enter any values here. And then inside the event types we'll do one thing, we'll use all object create events. So whenever you insert an object, this put post copy, so any kind of event where going to send event notification to particular destination. And after that, we are not enabling any of these other events, only the creation events we are doing. Okay, those are put, post, copy, and multi upload. So you can select all of this using this one button. And after that, if you scroll down, you have to choose the destination. Here, as I mentioned, we have three destinations. One is Lambda, SNS topic, SKS queue. So we'll do one thing, we'll select Lambda. So anyways, by default, it's selecting Lambda only. So Lambda. And here specify Lambda function. Choose from your Lambda functions. Okay, we can choose from our Lambda functions. Even you can enter your Lambda ARN. So I'm selecting choose from my Lambda function. I'm going to select. Okay, seems there was no Lambda functions currently, so I'm going to create a Lambda function. So for that, I have to go to or navigate to Lambda service. So I'm opening into a new tab and it will take some time to open. Okay, so Lambda open here and I'm going to create function, right? And I'm going to give name as Lambda S3. Okay, and going to change the runtime only to Python. And after that, I'm not going to change anything. Finally, create on function. So it will take some time to create the Lambda function and we will wait for some time. Yeah, it's still loading. We'll wait for some time. Yep, the Lambda function has been created. So this is the Lambda S3. That is what we created. And this is the function overview. Okay. And as we know, these kind of things in our Lambda section, right? Lambda introductory sections. What is code? What is test? What is monitor configuration alias and all, right? And this is our code. So we'll do one thing. We'll print this event also to see what are the event we're getting, right? Whether this event S3 is invoking this Lambda or not. So if we change something in Lambda, we have to deploy it. So I'm deploying the change. Okay, that's it. We have created the Lambda function. Now we are going to get that Lambda function in this event notification creation. So here we can choose the Lambda. So since uh, at the time of creation of this configuration Lambda is not created, we need to refresh once. So I'm going to refresh this thing by clicking on this refresh button. So we have to again give all these values, right? So I'm giving S3 event to Lambda, and I'm leaving this as it is, all object create events. And finally Lambda function, I'm going to select the Lambda function, that is Lambda S3, which we created. And finally going to click on this save changes. Okay, so if I scroll down and see the event notification section, we have added one event notification where we are saying the event type is all object create events. So any object you create, it will send notification. Okay, so to which destination, that is this Lambda. And if we go to the Lambda and if we refresh this page, right, you can able to see Lambda has some target here. Look, this trigger. So S3 will trigger this Lambda. But earlier this is missing, right? So now this anything happened, right? Any object created inside this S3 will invoke Lambda. So we'll see whether it's happening or not. So I'm going here. Okay. Now we will see how this event notifications works. Okay. So we have already created our S3 Lambda integration bucket and we'll try to upload some object and see whether it's invoking our Lambda or not. Okay, so for that I'm going to upload my object and add files, and I have my resume here and I'm going to upload my resume into this S3 bucket. So any object, right? Any object we can upload, and I uploaded my file and it is taking some time to upload and it's uploaded. Yes, if you see, succeeded. Now I'm closing this. The object is appearing in my bucket. Now we'll see whether it invoked our Lambda or not. Okay, this is our Lambda. So it has a trigger S3 and we'll see whether it's invoked or not properly. So I'm going to this CloudWatch, right? And going to see any recent invocations here, right? So these many recent invocations are there. So I have tested a few things earlier. So this was the latest invocation, right? If we open this latest invocation, you can able to see there was a request, right? And this is the record we have inserted. Yeah, this is previous logs, I think. We have to see the latest one. Yeah, this one, the latest one, the last one, right? And if you see here, we have uploaded Aditya Aripalli resume docs, right? And previously I tested because of that we have these logs. Just ignore these logs. And if you see here, our object has been inserted and that event printed, right? So whenever I upload an object to S3, it is invoking Lambda. So like this, you can invoke Lambda asynchronously using S3 event notifications. Yeah, that's it, guys. Like that, you can use AWS S3 to invoke Lambda. So thanks for watching my video. And if you like my video, like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to know any further concepts, let me know in the comments. I will try to record. And thanks for watching my videos. Bye.